Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to you, wherever and whenever you are joining us. Welcome to our latest edition of What Caught My Eye, or WCME Sports. As always, I am your host, the coach, Nick Veschi. I am joined by the boy, Stephen Veschi.
What up?
And the man, Stephen Komlo.
Hello.
If you're new to our program, just a couple, quick things of what our goal is. Our goal one is to have you learn something new each time. I think we try to do a good job of that. And our other goal is to bring you the most eye-catching, noteworthy events from the sporting landscape from the past week. And our focus is on what happens on the field. Not so much what TMZ would want to cover, but what happens on the field. So if you want to think of it as 90s, 2000 Sports Center, where it is highlights and you are learning about what happened in that sport and about who did that and, who won, who lost, those types of things, and you're growing from it and becoming a better fan. That's our other goal. Before we get started, a reminder to follow us on all of our socials, on X, on Instagram, and on Facebook at WCME_sports. You can visit us on our website at WCMEsports.com. And our episodes drop every Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. Now, without further ado, we'll move into our top catch from this past week, and it's going to be the World Series. It wrapped up last week, I think, on the day we released our last show, so we didn't get into the final result of it. But in case you missed it, the Dodgers won in 5 games to claim their second World Series crown in 5 years. Their other one was in 2020. But this was their first title in a full season since 1988, as many of you know, because the 2020 season was shortened and the World Series and much of the playoffs were played not in front of fans. I think the World Series was in Texas, but the rest of the playoffs in a lot of places had no fans. So this is really their first one that they got to enjoy. They didn't get a parade last time, all that stuff. So this meant a lot to these guys who were still there on this team because they wanted to get to experience all the things that every other champion had gotten to experience before. Freddie Freeman, he was named MVP. He hit 300 in the series. He had 4 home runs, 12 RBIs, which is an astounding number in 5 games. He is the first player to homer in each of the first 4 games of a World Series, which is pretty amazing. He only struck out 1 time during the entire 5-game series, which is also amazing. He is a lifetime .310 hitter in the World Series, believe it or not. So remember, he won a World Series in 2021 with the Braves, and I think he batted, whatever that equate to. But he's remarkably consistent in his time on the biggest stage. I think 6 homers in 11 World Series games for Freddie Freeman, which just goes to show how good of a player he is, and sometimes gets overlooked because he's not hitting 50 home runs a year. But the name of the game is to get a hit as many times as you can and drive in as many runs as you can. And he does that and has been a model of consistency for his entire career doing that. Another cool thing I thought, I always kind of like this when they try this in the playoffs, at least when it is advised. But Walker Buehler came on to pitch a scoreless 9th inning for the save in Game 5. He was the starter in Game 3. I think we talked about before, like Madison Bumgarner, some of our favorite starting pitchers. He did that many times in the playoffs and was very successful. And I think that's a huge testament to the mental fortitude of those players to be able to do something like that.
Scherzer.
Mm-hmm. They did the same thing. I mean, there's a long list of it, but I do appreciate it when we see them do it successfully.
One with the boys.
And when we see the manager put that pitcher in a position to succeed and not just throw him out there because this will look good, but throw him out there because this is the best option.
You mean like what Boone did with Nestor Cortez?
What? Did I say that? Yes, exactly. Like what Aaron Boone did with Nestor Cortez. If you missed it, that Game 5, the clincher for the Dodgers, looked as though it should have been an easy walk through for the Yankees to push to a Game 6. I believe they would have been the first team ever in World Series history to force a Game 6 after going down 3-0, which seems kind of amazing. That I think the stat is like it's 25 World Series now that have gone up 3-0. 21 of them ended in sweeps, and only 4 of them even went to a Game 5, and that's where they ended. This one turned out to be one of those. It could have been the first to go to Game 6, would have taken the series back to LA, which again would have been interesting to give that day of rest to see what would have happened. But alas, it was not to be.
By the way, did you see what Dave Roberts said? He said, I can now admit it publicly, like he was afraid of it going to 6 games.
Because pitching would have.
Pitching and everything like that, momentum, all of it. I think this would have gone 7.
I think so too.
Yeah. If they didn't screw it up.
Yeah. Well, Roberts managed his pitchers in Game 5 like he was doing that. He brought in Kopech real early. Some of his other high leverage guys came in, like Veschi, a lot earlier than normal, and I think it was because of that. He was like, "We've got a chance. We got to wrap it up. We don't want to give them, any breathing room. Don't give them an inch, right?" But as the boy alluded to, the Yankees went and screwed the pooch on that one in that Game 5. So Cole, the ace, was no-hitting the Dodgers through 4 innings, was on cruise control, looked effortless, looked as good as you probably will ever see him look. It was what you expect from someone you pay that money to, what you expect from someone of the talent and pedigree of Gerrit Cole. But then the 5th inning happened, and you saw 2 errors in that inning. Aaron Judge, who hadn't committed an error the entire year in center field, dropped a routine, soft fly ball.
Yeah, I know that fly ball may have been one of the easiest ones where it's like there's no chance of it getting caught in the lights. It's not super high.
Mm-hmm.
It's not getting caught in wind. It's not spinning some random direction. It's not
knuckling. Yeah.
Yeah. It's literally just
it's not
very soft semi-line drive fly ball right to you.
He dropped that. Then Anthony Volpe made an error, which is debatable whether you would consider that an error. I think the error was more on he didn't throw to the correct base. They said, but when you think about it, boy, he had to turn his whole body to make that throw instead of catching in one motion going to second.
I've watched that play a lot, and as someone that played shortstop, I disagree. I think that was the correct play. I think if he goes to second base, he rifles it into right field.
And then a run scores.
And he can't get him at first base.
No.
From where he was. I thought that was the correct play. Just spike the ball. It was just a terrible execution. Because I think it's a terrible execution because how many times do you practice that play? Because of these guys at this level typically turn 2 on plays. They don't that play that's hit there does how many times do you see that during the season?
It's very
Not
rare.
A lot. In high school, I did that play a lot, actually. Because there's no chance of me turning 2. So I think that's where the difference is. I actually thought it was the correct read and the correct play. They just spiked the damn ball.
So that's a true error? You give that true error?
I give that a true error, yes.
Okay. And then with 2, I think some of this happened with 2 outs, but no, those didn't happen with 2 outs. Cole had to strike out
yes.
2 players, including Ohtani, with the bases loaded, but then he failed to cover first base on a squibber to Anthony Rizzo, and a lot of people go, well, why didn't Rizzo charge it? Why didn't he do this? If you look, the ball is spinning like this and it changes direction. And he didn't want to pull a Bill Buckner where he, gets overzealous, doesn't get in front of the ball and it goes through his legs and then 2 runs score. And, who knows, it could have been even worse at that point. So he did the safe thing, especially with a broken fingers on his glove hand of making sure he secured the ball. Gerrit Cole just assumed, and we all know what happens when you assume, right? You make an ass out of you and me.
Yep.
But he just assumed that something like that off the bat, he can just scoop up and slowly get there. But in those situations, you can't assume that.
Yeah,
maybe in the regular season, Rizzo takes a chance. But again, we're talking elimination game in the World Series. He's sitting there going, no, I know it'll be a sure out if I just scoop. All I have to do is get the ball in my glove, and it's a sure out because the pitcher will be covering, and he wasn't. After that, Freddie Freeman and Teoscar Hernandez had big RBI hits, and lo and behold, a 5-0 lead turned into a 5-5 tie game. Eventually, the Yankees, they didn't quit. Give that credit to them. They battled back, tied the game when the Dodgers took the lead, but eventually the Dodgers, outlasted them. The Yankees had nothing left, and the Yankees lost that game. The Dodgers won the World Series. Now, interestingly, in that game, the Yankees became the first team, regular season or postseason, to do all of these things. I'm going to give you a list of all these things in one game. No other team's ever done these. Blow a 5-run lead and lose. Allow 5 runs in 1 inning in that same game. Commit 3 or more errors. Have a catcher's interference and a balk. All in the same game. No other team has ever done that. We watched a collapse and implosion of catastrophic proportion during that game.
Yeah, that's Little League shit. That is so ridiculous. The mental errors in the World Series, the highest level of players. That's so bad.
Yeah.
That can't happen.
No.
To go, like, I want to know the odds of all of those things. Like,
it has to be crazy because, again, it's never happened before. No team in Major League history has ever done all of those things before.
Their poor fundamentals and discipline finally caught up to them. I don't know how they made it that far to begin with.
Well, you know why?
Their base running mistakes, all the stupid things they've
They
done.
didn't have to play Houston.
We wouldn't be talking about it if Aaron Judge and Juan Soto and Stanton weren't on that team. They've carried that team through the whole year. So
yes.
if the Yankees win that game, none of this comes up.
And that brings to my next point is, what do the Yankees do going forward? Now, you could say I wanted to ask, what do the Dodgers do going forward as well? Because that's sometimes just as hard as when you win. How do you continue the success? Because it's easy to just sit on your laurels and not do anything, but that's not the Dodgers type of thing.
The good thing for the Dodgers is that they have a built-in player coming back, pretty much.
And Ohtani, and Kershaw, and I mean, they've had Glass now. They have so much coming back. You're right. It's almost like they don't have to do much because they had so many injuries this year. You probably have a few guys on expiring contracts.
Like four pitchers coming back.
Yankees
that are all like top 20
making their moves.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess again that's
gone, and then you guys. I'm sure everyone has seen the hilarious meme that is the Gerrit Cole agreement. Have you seen this, Nick?
No.
So
what is a meme?
Yeah,
meme. What is it?
MMA.
It's French.
Yes. Can you put it on the screen?
So Gerrit Cole, the club, he has an opt-out option in his contract, but the club also has an opt-in contract, which is crazy. And so Cole, I guess, said, you know what? And this all happened like within a couple hours. So like the headlines that were coming out were hilarious. It was like, Cole opts out, wants more money. Yankees say, all right, go ahead. And he said, wait, what? And he was like, well, you guys aren't going to pay me? And they said, no, go ahead and test out free market. And I guess then Cole was like, well, I haven't technically opted out officially yet. And they were like, so you want to just come back for our opt-in? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, cool, you're in then. So we're just going to proceed like none of this happened. So the Yankees, it officially boils down to Yankees pick up the opt-in option for Cole, and he agrees to it pretty much. But the back and forth was hilarious.
Well, you know what's funny? Even funnier about this is, you know who his agent is?
Boras?
Scott Boras. I seriously think Scott Boras has run, like, his tactics don't work anymore. Teams are not good, because that was a classic Scott Boras tactic. Basically, hold the Yankees hostage for $36 more million, or else I'm not going to be here. And the Yankees, of all teams, like you just said, okay, you'll come crawling back to us. You're not going to get a bigger contract somewhere else. No one's going to pay you all this. Even though he is great, even though he's earned what the Yankees have given him, it still won't make sense because he's 34 years old right now, I believe, going on 35. So it's like, okay, like you said, go ahead. We don't need to give you this extra $36 million. You're due another $144 million. You're really going to bitch over $144. And I think this was not Gerrit Cole saying this. I think it's all Scott Boras giving him the advice to do this, much like the way he screwed over Matt Chapman and Blake Snell and Jordan Montgomery and a laundry list of guys from years past, because teams aren't going to play his games. There's enough talent in the minor league systems. There's enough benefit to not signing these guys to massive contracts and eating up your payroll to not do it. So it's like,
I also think
he's not adjusting to the market, and he's not adjusting to what the clubs are looking for. And I also think he's just pissed off people. I think people hold grudges. People are human. Not everything is an algorithm in a computer that fits perfectly. And I think there's people probably like the Yankees who was like, screw you, man. Okay.
I think
do that.
I think there's yes, I agree with everything you're saying. 1. 2, I think it's way simpler than that. And that's the Yankees are just going to try to conserve every penny everywhere they can so they can throw it at Juan Soto. They traded Trammell, the outfielder, is that right?
Taylor Trammell?
Yeah, Trammell, that's it.
They had him on their team?
So they traded him to the Astros today for future cash considerations. So I mean, I think all signs are pointing at they're going to go all in to try and keep Juan Soto around.
Well, yeah, they should, but if you do look at the Yankees roster, you brought up this point, Komlo's without Judge and Soto, they don't even make the playoffs. Without Stanton, they don't make the World Series, right? Mm-hmm. Really, no one else on that team offensively did that much. Yes, there's some good players, right? Jazz Chisholm's a very good player. I think Volpe's a very good player. I like Alex Verdugo. I like Rizzo,
Chisholm
but
was a great
addition.
Line.
He's got another year of control as well.
Because
right, so there's a lot of good
base and he runs.
Yeah, he's a lot of times.
Pop. He's got a lot of pop too.
It's sometimes mindset stuff if he gets too overzealous, but sometimes you need that little edge. Doesn't hurt here or there.
I will say there also, by the way, if I just thought about this, Jazz Chisholm was converted to third base.
Yes,
right. They had to switch his position.
He was a utility player.
He's more second baseman.
He came up as a second baseman. The Marlins didn't really like him at second base and thought they could. Well, actually, this was kind of their goals. They moved him to center field. They were trying to get Gleyber Torres to come play second base for them. Wound up getting Luis Arraez, which is why Chisholm was in center field. The Yankees traded for Chisholm, moved him to third base because there was a hole there. And he actually, for someone who never played third base at this level, I thought did a really good job defensively. Because that's not like a video game thing either. That's difficult.
I do too, but it did come up in a critical moment. I know Volpe gets the error. It's definitely on Volpe for the bad throw, but it did come up in a moment.
Maybe he makes that scoop if he's an everyday third baseman.
It's just something to throw out there. It's
splitting hairs. But I mean, I think it's more of like you said, the play's never practiced, and someone who's never played third base at that level before never practiced that play with Volpe.
Correct.
You know,
he didn't look comfortable.
No, he didn't. But again, he's learning, and I think this goes back to the roster construction. I think there's a lot of guys that you don't really need on that team to make it back to the World Series, based off the fact that we just went through and said you got here because of like 2-3 guys, right? Alex Verdugo is one of them. Rizzo's one of them. Gleyber Torres is one of them. There's laundry list of Rodon I think is one of them, but he's signed long term. Marcus Stroman's another one of them. Yeah. There's a lot of guys that have a lot of cap hit, or not cap hit, salary hit, right? Because there's no salary cap in baseball. There's a lot of guys who are making a pretty good chunk of change that you really don't necessarily need to get back there. Clay Holmes is probably another one. You don't necessarily need him to get back to the World Series. So I think if you take all that money away, as much as money as those guys were actually making, it's almost like one whole Juan Soto year, maybe even more than one Juan Soto year. So you have guys in your system. You have Jason Dominguez, Spencer Jones, Oswald Peraza, Oswaldo Cabrera. You have all these guys that are there that can play all these positions that will cost you nothing. And it's like you're replacing guys that aren't that much above replacement level. So I think that's the interesting thing is, do the Yankees do the smart thing, which I think is that? Do they do the flashy thing and go sign some like Chris Bryant type of player for like a 2-year, $25 million a year contract to say, oh, he'll come and fill this hole in left field and third base, and then he plays 50 games for you and hits 180 like Joey Gallo. Actually, I don't even know if Joey Gallo hit 180, to be honest with you. Which is actually, in all seriousness, right? You could probably look that one up.
I am going to look that up.
But you know what I'm saying? Like this seems like prime to get these guys who you've had in your system who are talented.
161.
161. Didn't even get to 180.
Do you know what his career batting average is?
Oh, it's on, probably 170.
Close. I mean, he is below the Mendoza line.
Yes, he is.
It's 194.
Yeah. And see, this is why I have always resented the comparison of him to Adam Dunn. Because Adam Dunn did not hit 194. He hit like 240, I think is his career average. But and 190 to 240 is 50 points. That's the same difference as 250 to 300.
And Adam Dunn's stretch of greatness, he was averaging like 265.
Hitting 40 home runs a year.
Yes, correct.
Yes. So, yeah, I don't give me that crap. Oh, Joe Gallo's got elite defense. Don't give a shit. It's not that elite. I watched it. I don't know where they get those metrics from. He's not that good.
I don't know.
He's got a cannon for an arm, but he's not that good defensively.
I can't understand why he's still on the show right now. I mean, holy crap, these are
potential. That's why. It's all. There's always going to be that upside. You're going to watch him hit.
He's been there for 10 years.
That
My goodness, that's bad. By the way, 10 years and he's only got, for someone who's got all the pop in the world, he only has 208 home runs. It's averaging 20 home runs a year.
Which is 208 more home runs than we'll ever hit, but
while batting 190.
Yeah. But he's got elite defense. Yeah. No, that doesn't move the needle for me. But yeah, I think it'd be interesting to see what the Yankees do. Interesting to see what the Mets do, because they are owner Steve Cohen has made no mistake about saying that he is going to spend as much as he needs to make them competitive. And they were competitive this year. They played really well. Is this the impetus for more spending from them? Or are they more controlled? Because the last time they tried to do this, it was reckless spending. It was giving $40-some million a year to Scherzer and Verlander, who, as great players as they are, and going to be first ballot Hall of Famers, we're 40 years old, right? And it just doesn't work. They're not worth $40 million a year, right? So are we going to see something like that happen? Or are we going to see them target specific needs instead of just throwing money at, the dartboard and seeing what sticks? We're going to see them target specific needs. And if they do, are they going to be good? Is the expectation again going to be World Series, or is it going to be we're going to be excited to get to the playoffs?
Do you bring back Pete Alonso?
I think so, because my thought is who else? Who else is out there that plays first base that you can get?
Walker.
I was going to bring up Christian Walker. That would be my thought, but
the first baseman talent, by the way, I mean, that has dropped off.
Yeah, you know why?
Significantly.
You know why?
Home run, strikeout. Why?
No, it's because of the whole Scott Hatteberg thing. Oh, first base is easy; anyone can do it. So they stopped drafting and picking people who played first base and just said, "We'll convert someone to first base." So you have these random guys that go over there who are converted, who aren't true first basemen, and they didn't come up with the power and the pedigree.
That's true. There are a lot of also, stature-wise, not your prototypical first baseman.
Yes.
I, as someone that played infield, I want my first baseman to give me a big-ass target. I don't want, there's some guy who...
Arise plays first base.
Arise plays first, he's what, 5'9"? 200?
Yeah,
I need
that's the prime example right there is Luis Arise.
Yes.
He should be playing
Michael
second
Chavis.
base. He played first base a lot. Yeah,
he was 5'11".
There's tons of guys. John Birdie was playing first base for the Yankees. I thought he did a fantastic job, but he's not even 6 feet tall.
I get it. These guys are athletic and they can make maybe more range, make some more plays that way, but. Give me a 6'3", 6'4", 220-pound first baseman.
Agreed.
We used to have.
Agreed. So Christian Walker, I think, would be a target. But again, my point will be: are you making yourself any better by acquiring Christian Walker as opposed to keeping Pete Alonso? Because again, if money is no object, Christian Walker may be saving you money.
The answer is yes.
You think so? Why?
Much better defender. Much better defender. I also think he gives you better at bats. Pete Alonso might give you maybe 10 more home runs a year, but Christian Walker's at bats I think are a lot better, a lot tougher. Christian Walker is one of my favorite first basemen.
I really like him too. He's a true first baseman. He's a fantastic player. My thing though is you have Pete Alonso, who has proven he can perform
in
New York in the toughest market with expectations. As great a player as Christian Walker is, he's had all his success in Arizona. And many, many people, probably even listening to the show, don't have no idea who Christian Walker is.
He did go to the World Series last year.
Yes, he did. Again, we're not saying he's a nobody, but again, that would be a very Yankees move.
Let him and then have him like Chase Henley.
Sign him to a massive deal, a 5-6 year contract worth, $120 million, and he comes in and doesn't perform, and now you've got dead weight for 4 years.
He's also 34 too, as well. He's not a young. He's not a young buck.
No, he's not.
He's 33.
Again, this is my point. And Alonso is a heartbeat of a team type of player, and even though you're right, you get some at bats that get thrown away in his defense.
Defensive metric. I mean, I shouldn't even say defensive metrics. Just watch him play defense scares me.
But again, it's over the long haul of the season through postseason play. What are you willing to live with, right?
I'm on Walker.
I'm willing to live with Pete Alonso every day. We just saw him hit some of the biggest home runs, arguably in Mets playoff history. That's him, right? I don't think those things are easily replaceable.
Okay.
And they're not measurable either. And that's the difficult part, is how do you replace things that are irreplaceable?
Philosophizer.
Yeah. I dabble. I'm a wordsmith. Anything else baseball-wise before we move on?
No.
Nope.
Slam the door on that season. See you again in March.
Yep.
Or maybe a free agency is fun. We'll talk about it, but that's been a dud the last few years as well. So we're going to go ahead and move on to college football. We are in the heart of that. We're there's 3-4 weeks left of the regular season. Then we get into our conference championship games, bowl season, and the playoff, which means there's a lot of fun stuff to look ahead to. But each week is always in and of itself a great soap opera and drama. So I wanted to start off with some nice feel-good stories for us that we've covered a little bit. But Army, West Point, they improved to 8-0 for the third time since 1950 with a 20-3 win over hapless Air Force. And they did this all with a backup quarterback. Bryson Daly? Is that Army's QB's name? I think that's I think his name. He didn't play in that game. But they were still able to get a win over a rival, which is pretty good. But the cooler thing is they still have not trailed yet this year.
Army hasn't trailed yet?
Army has not trailed yet this entire year.
Love that.
Yep.
Oh, they have to be the only team then, because Indiana was the other, and they trailed.
Which brings me to Indiana. They trailed, like you said, for the first time this year when they went down 10-0 at Michigan State. But then, boy, did you see how many straight points they rattled off?
I believe it was 47.
47. That is not a typo. 47 straight points after.
And I took that personally.
Yep, you poked the bear. Yeah, they can't, with a vengeance. 47 straight points to win 47-10 in East Lansing. They improved to 9-0, which is the best start in school history for the Hoosiers.
By the way, I was thinking about this earlier because I just got a NCAA 25. I guess it's EA college football 25 now. I just got that immediately.
How'd that happen, by the way?
I was bored and pissed off at West Virginia being terrible, and I said, I want to play college football. So
I can make them not terrible.
But I was thinking,
I want to live a fantasy.
Yeah, Kurt Signetti is literally making the fantasy come to like reality.
Yeah.
Kurt Signetti is doing something that is literally should only be done in video games. Like, and even I kind of feel bad doing like the first year going undefeated and winning like a national championship. So I'm like, this isn't realistic. Like taking a team like this and doing it, like it's not realistic. Indiana, what they do go like 3-9 last year or something. And,
yeah, they lost. They only won 3 or less games. Yeah.
Yeah, and now they're 9-0 with a new head coach.
Yes.
Literally just come in, just did it like a video game. Just said, all right, I can do this.
Yeah. Why hasn't this been done before?
Oh, by the way, you know where Kurt Signetti went to school?
Goodness, I should know this. Is it like Rutgers? Is it a D3 school?
No. Well, they might as well be. They play like it. It's West Virginia.
He went to West Virginia?
He was a backup quarterback at West Virginia. He's from Pittsburgh.
Really?
And you know, if Neil Brown didn't have a great year last year going 9-4, he would have been canned. And guess who would have probably been the first hire? Kurt Signetti. Now, I don't know that if that would have been the case, but I like to think it probably would have.
What's West Virginia's record, by the way?
4-4.
Bad.
4-4.
Sorry, yeah. Oh, you wanted the
4-4.
real answer.
Yeah, not good. Not good.
Thank you.
And every team they lost to went 0-4 this week.
Well, that's the Big 12. More on.
Penn State and Pitt, 2 of them.
Yeah.
Penn State and Pitt lost.
Bring up Penn State. Ohio State really stifled them offensively, if you can even call what they did offense. Actually, it was offensive what Penn State did on offense, because Ohio State won 20-13 in Happy Valley, and Penn State's offense scored 0 points despite having 2 drives where they had first and goal from inside the 5-yard line. They scored 0 points offensively.
It's amazing that even with the changing coordinator, because it's the old Kansas coordinator who has been great so far. He was great at Kansas. Was great so far for Penn State. It's amazing what happens that when they still get in the big games, they still end up being the same exact team we've seen over the last 5 years.
Yeah, we said it during the Big Ten preview show that we'll believe it when we see it from Penn State. This seems like another year where they'll go 10-3 or whatever, 10-2,
10-2.
miss out on the playoff by one spot because of some inept offense or bad play calling or something, and we'll be back here next year. Can't get over the hump.
It blows my mind that like every year you're like, oh, this is the year. This is different. It feels different. And then every single year they do the same exact thing.
Now, I do think Penn State got screwed by having this be a noon game because that took away a lot of their home field advantage because the big draw is having that whiteout at like 8 o'clock at night where the place is freaking nuts. And yes, there was a lot of people there, but it didn't feel like it's nuts. And a noon game never feels like it's nuts as people who have attended many noon games because that's when my school played every game because they were that bad. A noon game is nowhere near as crazy as a night game. It's just not.
No, there's like 8 more hours of tailgating.
Yes.
Woo! Woo! Tailgate.
Exactly. So I think that hurt Penn State. I expected them to lose really because of that. Because if you're going to try to take down a team who arguably has more talent or at least is living rent-free in your head because you can't beat them, you need an extra thing to get yourself over the hump. And playing at noon, yes, great fan base, great atmosphere, but not the same as a night game. You lose that, and I think that contributed to that end result there. Speaking of night games, though, I know those of you who follow us on our social media saw our reporter in the field this week, Mr. Ian James Cathcart. He attended the South Carolina-Texas A&M game, and we posted some of the sights and sounds that he had from that game. That was a fun game. That first half was electric, 20-20 at halftime, but then South Carolina rattled off 24 straight points, 24 unanswered points, actually, in the second half to win 44-20. They stormed the field. It was awesome. Cathcart said he was not able to storm the field because he was there with his 7-year-old nephew, so I think that would have been probably the right decision. But I thought that was a good win for Shane Beamer and his crew. Kind of goes to show that there's no real top dogs, I don't think, in the SEC besides Georgia and maybe Texas, but I'm still only sticking with Georgia because every time someone go, oh, well, A&M's on a run, they're going to do this, and they come in and lay an egg like that to a South Carolina team that's average. Maybe above average. I'll give them above average. But a team they should have lost to ODU, right? Inconsistent.
Yes, they're inconsistent. They should have lost to ODU. Then they go into Kentucky and beat them 31-6, right? And then they play LSU down to the wire, and then they get smoked by Ole Miss. And then they play Alabama down to the wire, and then they beat Oklahoma big. Well, I guess they're kind of on a roll. They beat Oklahoma big in Oklahoma, and then beat Texas A&M pretty big.
But Oklahoma, I think, stinks.
Oklahoma does stink.
Everyone should be beating them big, as far as I'm concerned.
South Carolina's next game at Vandy.
Oh, that's right.
That's a good game.
That's a good game. Speaking of Vandy, they became bowl eligible for the first time since 2018 with a 17-7 win at Auburn. It's the first time the Commodores have beaten both Alabama and Auburn in the same season since 1955. So good for them. I think they're back ranked in the polls. I think 24, 25, something like that. The AP poll is Vandy, and very well deserved. Watching them, they are a legitimate top 25 team, in my opinion. And I don't think, because we've talked about this before, like, oh, well, they'll always rank like the next best SEC team will always get that rank as opposed to some 7-2 ACC team. But Vandy is very much deserving of being ranked. They're legit.
I agree.
They're a legit good team. All right, so nice to see that from them. Now moving on to the Big 12. If that's still is that still a conference? Boy,
it's the Wild Wild West. Are you kidding me? It's the best conference to watch.
Yeah, you could say that, but
anything can happen on any night, and it's always just insane.
That's
just
true.
When you think like, oh man, Iowa State, they look like they're on a roll. They're playing Texas Tech. Texas Tech is okay, they're not that great. Kansas State, they're fantastic now. They got their groove back. They've only lost to BYU. They have Houston. Houston's terrible.
Terrible.
We'll chalk that one up as a win. Nope. Not so fast, my friend.
Yes, those are the two games I had highlighted. That Houston game, Houston, I think, was down 19-10 in the fourth quarter. Yes, they came back to beat Kansas State, who you just said was, starting to look like, they're legit playoff contender. They beat Kansas State 24-19, and like you said, Houston stinks. They're terrible.
Yes, they're terrible.
The former Fighting Dana Holgersons are bad. And this was the Cougars' first win versus a ranked opponent since they beat who in 2017? Who did they beat in 2017 that was their last ranked win before this?
Were they part of the American in that?
Yes.
Was it someone in their conference like a Memphis
Yes.
or something?
Was not Memphis.
Tulane?
No. Good guess.
I don't know.
South Florida.
Oh.
As the last time the Houston Cougars had beat a ranked opponent before they took out Kansas State, and like you said, also Iowa State, they dropped to an unranked opponent. Like you said, Texas Tech's all right. They're
okay.
They're going to go to a bowl game, whatever. They're a typical Big 12 team. But they gave up a touchdown with 20 seconds left and lost by 1 point, 23-22 in Ames for their first loss of the season.
Yeah.
So
Taj Brooks is one of my favorite running backs to watch, though.
Is that the Red Raiders?
Yes, he's awesome. Watch, he never gets tackled by the first guy. He's one of those players where it's just a nightmare trying to tackle this guy.
Yeah,
I would say if you're gonna tune into one of those games at Texas Tech, Big 12 game, watch Taj Brooks if you're gonna watch Texas Tech.
Yeah. Speaking of guys who don't get tackled easily, Syracuse's running back LaQuint Allen has had some clutch touchdowns this year, including in their latest game against Tech. He scored the tying touchdown run in the final 30 seconds to force overtime, and then Cuse got the ball to start overtime. He scored again for them, and when Tech got their first possession, they forced a fumble. The Orange recovered, and they went on to win 38-31 over the Nokies.
By the way, is Virginia Tech, is that the biggest what if of college football? They've lost every one of their 4 losses is by 1 possession.
Is it really?
And 2 in overtime.
So they lost to Vandy.
In overtime. Syracuse in overtime. Miami on a Hail Mary.
That's right. Oh, my God.
Who was the other loss to? Rutgers by 3.
Yes. And again, those are all legitimately decent teams. Like, it's not like any of those teams are complete garbage. And none of them are, Miami's very good, but none of those other teams are like, and I said Vandy, I think, is a legitimate team.
Vandy's very good.
Rutgers and Syracuse aren't like barn burners, but they're also not bad.
I just think it's hilarious that they're 5-4, right? And you're easily looking at it and going, wow, God, one play here, one better coaching here, whatever, better play call. Don't fumble the ball. Someone stays healthy. The Hail Mary debacle.
Yeah. So does that mean Clemson should be on upset alert going into Lane Stadium this Saturday?
They absolutely should be because of what they just did with Louisville. Weren't prepared to play. I don't understand that. And I really thought Clemson turned the corner, and I was like, oh, this team's going to roll. I really feel good about them. They're going to roll. Now that they lost that game, maybe they come out pissed off and they beat Tech in Lane. But, I wouldn't be shocked if Virginia Tech wins that game just because of what I've seen from Clemson. Clemson on paper, I think it's a good matchup against Tech because of their defensive line and because they typically play the run well. And they have just, crazy athletes on the outside. But, it's not – sometimes great matchups don't always mean you're going to win. So, I don't know. Is that game at night?
I don't think so.
No, I think it's at noon. Yeah, because both of them lost. It's just – you had a chance to have that be a premier game in college football.
Hell, that could have been College Game Day.
I would have done it College Game Day. If both those teams won, I think I may have looked at that as a College Game Day pick. But 5-4 versus 6-2 is in the ACC is not ideal.
Yeah, I think your point about the fact that Clemson got slapped around and embarrassed is not going to happen 2 weeks in a row. That Dabo doesn't do that. The great coaches are the ones who always respond to adversity in a positive way, and I think that's going to hurt Tech. I actually don't. I could see that game getting out of hand.
Right. To
be honest, just because, again, it's not at night. If it's at night, I could see Tech keeping it close. I can see this game being close for the first quarter and a half. Clemson takes a lead at halftime, and then the second half just steamrolls them because of the anger that's going to be coming out of the ears of Dabo Swinney. You'll be able to see over the Blue Ridge Mountains.
And Tootin needs to play. I have no idea what his injury is or why he was out against Syracuse, but he needs to play. If he's not in, I mean, Clemson should win that game by double digits.
Agreed. Does our resident DGen gambler know the point spread for that?
Oh, I'm sure. Let me text him. I'm sure he does.
Is he going to leave the state just so he can gamble on that game?
He's actually in Vegas.
There we go.
Oh,
that
God.
Hey, Pete Rose left us too soon. He's got to pick up where he left off. May he rest in peace. We're doing this to honor his memory, people. That's going to do it for college football. We're going to move on to the NFL right now. NFL kind of at the midway point of the season because of the adoption of the 17th game. There's no longer everyone's at the halfway point after they get to 8. So when you're at 8 or 9, you're at the halfway point and everyone's there now. So a couple of fun things that happened over the weekend. The Bills Mafia had a time because Tyler Bass drilled a 61-yard field goal with 5 seconds left to give Buffalo a 30-27 win over Miami.
Cello, you got a Bass.
Thank you. Their lead, Buffalo's lead in the AFC East, is now up to 4 games, which almost seems insurmountable football-wise. Like that would take a colossal collapse and would take one of those teams to actually play football. Miami, New England, and the Jets, and I don't see that happening anytime soon out of those teams.
By the way, not to cut you off with your NFL thing because you seem to be on a roll right now, but I texted our degenerate gambler about the Tech Clemson point spread. Within like 10 seconds, I got plus 6.5.
Got to memorize. He's etching it on the wall of his room every time it changes.
He's in a sports book right now.
Yes.
There's no way you just have that random fact right there in front
Especially
of you.
When you can't gamble in Virginia, so it never shows up on his stuff.
Yeah.
When he's like looking at his phone in the state of Virginia, so I guarantee once he got to Vegas, he like knew exactly what it was.
Yes, that's why he's the one. So you're the one.
That's our guy.
Yes. Going back to NFL, Lamar Jackson, he had a perfect passer rating with 3 touchdowns, and Derrick Henry rushed for 106 yards and 2 touchdowns in Baltimore's 41-10 rout of Denver. They may be the most dangerous 3-loss team in the NFL. They're capable of doing that every single time they step on the field. Kind of crazy that they have 3 losses. And what the Cleveland loss shouldn't have happened. One is to Kansas City, and the other is to, I think, another decent team. But really,
Peterson.
Really? They lost?
Yeah.
They did lose,
at home.
At home, yeah. Okay, so that's...
They started the year 0-2.
Yeah. Yeah, so it got just some head-scratching losses. But man, when you can, I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs. I just know that. Speaking of playoffs, the Washington Commanders look, destined to get to the playoffs this year. They improved to 7-2 and have a half-game lead over the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC East after their 27-22 win over the, I say hapless. I like that word. That's the word of the week. Hapless. The hapless New York Giants in MetLife Stadium this past week. So Commanders looking good. We said this before. Jane Daniels, I think, is a legitimate MVP contender. I don't see it happening. He's got numbers-wise has to step it up, but he's been one of the most impactful players this year. The whole culture around that team has just changed drastically. There's better leadership from the coaching standpoint and support overall organizationally, and I think that's showing in their results. So good for them. Good for the players that are on that team. Speaking of,
we find out a lot about the Commanders in the next 2 weeks.
They got the Eagles
versus Steelers, and then 4 days later at the Eagles.
Yeah, speaking of the Eagles, they've won 4 in a row. They just beat the Jags 28-23. Saquon Barkley seemingly defied the laws of physics with his reverse hurdle, which I guess is the best way to put it.
That was crazy.
Because what's crazy is the things he did to set that up and have him before. It's not like he was just standing there and was like, "Oh, let me try this." He does a spin move, does another juke, and finds himself in a position and is somehow able to do that.
That looked like Tobey Maguire, Spider-Man. That was
not Andrew Garfield and not Tom Holland, but
I'd throw Tom Holland.
Specifically Tobey Maguire has to be him.
Specifically, I think Tobey was the best Spider-Man.
Because if I said Tom Holland, you would have been like, "Oh, how dare you? It's Tobey Maguire."
We can agree it's not.
Why would I have said that?
We can agree with it's Andrew. Yeah, actually, yeah, we can agree though. But yeah, that was the most like superhuman, like sixth sense, like
It's a Spidey sense
move that I've ever seen.
Yeah, but he wound up with 159 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Like I said, the Eagles, you got to think are still the favorite to win that division. But you're right, we'll learn a lot about the Commanders coming up here soon. Next, moving on to Seattle after Geno Smith from
West by God,
Virginia. He threw an absolute dime to Jackson Smith and Jigba with 51 seconds left to force overtime against the Rams. But Matthew Stafford delivered a dime of his own in OT on the first possession to Demarcus Robinson for a 26-20 Rams victory in Seattle to move them, I think, back to 500. Then on Monday night, Baker Mayfield, he led a tying touchdown drive, which culminated in a 1-yard touchdown pass to Ryan Miller with 27 seconds left to force overtime at Kansas City. But Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes, and so they got the ball to start the OT session. They just marched right down the field. They scored on a Kareem Hunt, I think, 2-yard touchdown run, which was proved to be the game winner for a Kansas City 30-24 victory, and made the Chiefs remain unbeaten at 8-0, last unbeaten team in the league. That takes us to our division leaders, again at kind of the pseudo halfway point, if you will. In the AFC in the East, we just said this earlier, the Buffalo Bills at 7-2. They probably have the most comfortable lead of any division leader, I think. In the North Division, you have those Pittsburgh Steelers. They're at 6-2. In the South, the defending South champions, the Houston Texans, are at 6-3. And then in the West, the aforementioned defending two-time defending Super Bowl champion Kansas City Chiefs are at 8-0. Just seem like a machine. It's like watching the Patriots from whatever 15, 20 years ago. It really feels like that. Then on the NFC side, the Washington Commanders, like we said, are 7-2 atop the NFC East. In the North, the team I think who is the best team in the NFC, the Detroit Lions. Yes, the Detroit Lions. They are 7-1 atop a pretty competitive NFC North.
It's a great division. That used to be Packers and everyone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Every so often you have the Vikings do stuff, but the Lions were always just horrendous. The Bears have been horrendous for a while. And you're right, you'd ever so often have the Vikings, but it was, for the most part, the Packers. Which, again, speaks volumes.
Now it's competitive. Every single one of those division games is tough.
Iron sharpens iron.
Bears still aren't great.
Mm-mm.
But those other three teams, man.
Yeah, playoff teams, in my opinion, yeah. But I think Detroit's the best team in the NFC. I really do. In the South, another kind of surprising division leader is the Atlanta Falcons. They sit at 6-3. Captain Kirk D. Cousins playing pretty well. Yes, that division stinks, but someone's got to win it. And you like them. I mean, what?
I love Kirko.
Yes. Who doesn't?
Big Kirk Cousins fan.
Yes. Yeah. Kind of because you see someone who's been doubted and really doubted for what reason? Because he doesn't fit what you want him to fit.
Because he's not a showcase player.
Yeah.
That's the exact reason. He's looked at as, well, he doesn't have the strongest arm. He's not a fast runner. He's not 6'5", 230 pounds. You know, how good can he be? Well, he's a goddamn football player is what he is.
Yeah, he only went to Michigan State. It's not like he went to Ohio State or Alabama. He was only a third-round pick. Like there's got to be people who are better than him, and there's not. There's not enough people in the world right now who are better than him to be a starting quarterback in the NFL.
He's so good. And he's what, 37, 38, somewhere around there?
Yeah, he's getting up there, still doing it. Good for Captain Kirk. And then in the NFC West, the Arizona Cardinals are 5-4 and lead that division. Believe it or not. Good for them. They were much maligned last year. Kyler was injured a lot. I think this does show how good Kyler Murray is. I've heard some people recently kind of be like, I don't think he's that good. I think he's still really good. I think he's got does a lot of good things. And I don't see him, when healthy, I feel like he doesn't make the mistakes. When he's making mistakes sometimes, it's because he's got some like lingering issue and he's trying to force something because his A option isn't there because of the injury. And that's what gets him in trouble. But he's healthy now, making pretty good decisions. They sit at 5-4. I think they just who'd they shellac? They shellacked the Bears, I think, this past week.
Yes, they've won 3 straight.
Yeah, Good for them. Anything else NFL-wise before we move on?
No.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing I want to talk about was some things from the NBA and the NHL. As much as, a lot of things are happening this time of year, we forget that those two sports started their regular seasons recently, last few weeks. But two teams have really stood out to me, the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA and the Winnipeg Jets in the NHL. Cleveland is off to an 8-0 start. It's, I believe, tied for the best start in franchise history. And the Winnipeg Jets are 11-1-0 with 22 points. They have scored 5+ goals in 8 of their 12 games. And for those of you who don't know much about hockey, it's really hard to score 5 goals. It's hard to score 3 goals. And Winnipeg, at this point, they're consistently lighting the lamp to the tune of like 6 goals a game, which is just.
There's a deeper story there too, though. I mean, not only that, but like their top 3 players, stars, whatever you want to call them, are they all have 16 points already.
Yeah.
In the season. It's nuts. They've in the 3 of them, Kyle Connor and Nikolai Ehlers.
Isn't it Ehlers? Nikolai Ehlers.
Sure. And Mark Scheifele. They all have 24. They've combined for 24 goals this season.
Yeah.
It's
no,
crazy.
Kyle Connor's got 19 points. Right. Josh Morrissey, the defenseman, and Neil Pionk, they have double-digit points already, like 13, 16 points. Yeah, what I've noticed kind of from both teams is in terms of the sport that they play, their cores are relatively young, but they're not inexperienced. Right? Last year, Cleveland, they went to the playoffs, won their first-round match against the Magic, then lost the next round. Gosh, who'd they lose to? It was Boston or New York or something. But they have guys on their team that have that experience, but they're pretty young, especially, not NBA young where you're like 18, 19, but they're also not old, right? They're like 24. You have guys like Darius Garland, Jared Allen, Isaac Okoro, Evan Mobley, who was fantastic in the playoffs. And I think that's helped them is that they have that experience. They have that core of players, but they also have the captain, who's Donovan Mitchell, racking things up, leading them, who, even though he's not that old, he's like 28, I think, he's the elder statesman for the most part out there. He's the one showing them the way. He was the difference maker when they acquired him. And I think that those year or two of experience with these guys is showing. They are producing very well. And I did have one note from the Cavaliers as well. They have currently right now the best pick and roll point guard in the NBA. Boy, do you know who that is?
Ty Jerome.
Ty Jerome from
my favorite UVA.
From
He's
UVA.
Wahoo.
Yes.
Don't call him a Cavalier.
Nope.
He's a Wahoo.
Well, he's also a Cavalier now because he plays for the Cleveland.
He is a
Cavaliers. Spoiler alert. But yes, he is in terms of like offensive efficiency, like the percentage of time when he's in pick and roll that it results in either free throws or a basket. He right now is the highest, most efficient point guard in the entire NBA, coming off the bench for them. Guys like George Niang, another veteran who's on that team. They have the mix, is what I like. Right? They have that mix of people. Dean Wade, not D Wade, but Dean Wade, Kansas State, and a couple other guys who are like just solid role players, but they have that mix of ages, but they're not too old, but they have that experience, and that's what Winnipeg also has as well. Like you said, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk. They've got those guys, again, they're not as young as the Cavs guys, but in hockey terms, they're all like 27, 28, 29. Right? In hockey, you normally play a little longer than you do in the NBA. I think mostly because it doesn't do the damage to your knees, skating-wise. But they're kind of in that same boat. These guys have had experience. They've been together for a little bit, and they have that mix of people, right? You have Cole Perfetti, who's really young, producing very well. But then you have some other veteran guys like Nino Niederreiter, who they picked up, who in his 30s that can show you and help you along the way. But again, just like Cleveland, who has their captain, Donovan Mitchell, the Jets have their captain in goalie Connor Hellebuck, who's arguably the best goalie in the world at times. And I think both teams have that mix. That's what you look for, that mix of age, skill, and diversity in skill and cohesion. And you're seeing those guys. That's why these two teams, I think, are producing the way they are, is because of that. Anything else from them, Komlo, that you've seen, maybe Jets-wise?
No, I mean, it's just like you said, Hellebuck is picking up right where he left off when he was healthy, which is if everyone should be circling them. But I also think that maybe they've had an easier start to the season than a lot of people would initially, say. Because I mean, what they're don't get it twisted. What they're doing is fantastic, and they look incredible. But I do think that they've benefited from a pretty easy start of the season. I would love to see them withstand, keep it rolling though, and roll through some of these heavy hitter teams. But I mean, heck, when you're sitting on top, it's on everybody else to beat you. You know what I mean?
I agree, and at the same time too, they're professionals playing other professionals. So the worst team that you're playing against at this level, NHL, NBA, NFL, MLB, is still way better than any college team or team from the level below, right? So you're still playing against great competition, but you're right. Sometimes you can get that favorable schedule can skew things. That happened to the Rays, I think, last year. They started off playing like the A's and the Tigers and just all the worst teams in the whole league their first 3 weeks, and they went up like 19-2 or something crazy, and then it caught up to them because eventually the cream rose to the top. But I think these teams have the talent, and most importantly, they have leaders at the correct positions. You need your leaders at goalie and at point guard, or a guy who has the ball in his hands the most time, and Donovan Mitchell. Those are the guys you need to have to make runs in the playoffs and to win championships. So I think those are two teams that we could say watch out for them over the course of the rest of the season and into the postseason. Anything else hockey or basketball wise that you could say caught either of your eyes?
Yeah,
No.
a couple of your Wahoos. I don't know if you saw Jay Huff drop 20.
Yes, he's been fantastic. Jay Huff,
Great.
former UVA center. He's been, amazing for the Memphis Grizzlies. They just converted his contract already this year from a 2-way contract to a 4-year, regular roster spot contract. Him backing up Zach Edey. They've made a great duo. They're an interesting team, Memphis. They have, what I love about them, when you look at their roster, there's like two guys who went to what you consider traditional powers in college, and the rest of these guys are kind of like, where'd this guy come from? Right? They got Conchar, who went to IPFW. You know what IPFW stands for, boy?
In Indiana, Purdue, Fort Wayne.
Yes.
Right? Oh, nailed it.
LaRavia, I think, went to Wake Forest. They got Bad Tip and Pippen. Scottie Pippen's son, I think, is on their team. He went to Vanderbilt. They got just random guys who went to these random schools who are producing at high levels. And I mean, heck, even John Morant, their best player, went to Murray State, right? And that to me, I like, because every one of those guys has a chip on their shoulder. Every single one of them, because they've been told at some point in time in their life that they're not good enough because of certain things that they can't control, like where they're from, or, how tall they are, or, some other physical aspect about them. And yet here they are succeeding and prospering at the highest level of the sport, validating what these guys knew all along. And I think that for a lot of people, you have to have an edge. That's their edge. And I love that, almost not to say random guys, but guys that kind of come out of nowhere if you're not a really in-depth basketball fan. And I love that. But anything else basketball, NBA, NHL wise?
Not NBA or NHL, but I don't know if you're going to get to this later, but it is basketball related. College basketball did start yesterday. Yep. And it's a travesty, a shame, and a mockery that they don't do the 24-hour tip-off.
Oh, wasn't that awesome?
I used to love that.
Yes.
It was such a great...
That was awesome, but I think we were probably...
Logistically?
Well, no, we were probably two of the 4 people in the whole country who were sitting there watching a game at 3 a.m. between Lehigh and Bucknell, right?
It would be like a West Coast team, like a Washington or 3 a.m. They're probably
Cal State Northridge, yeah.
Yeah, Cal State Northridge, yeah, good one.
But yes, got some of those things happen, but it was awesome when they did it. It was such an amazing thing. I think it's logistics are very difficult to do that. I think it's more about do we want to waste the resources doing this? Is the return on investment there of sending all these crews out to do a game at 4 a.m, right? When we could just have recorded programs that just run for a few hours and we'll show the big games at night.
Yeah.
But you're right. I was hoping you would get to that men's and women's college basketball kicked off yesterday. Gonzaga dominated Baylor. That was a very, very impressive. Yes, not a home game, but they're in Spokane. They were playing down the street from their school. So even in that environment, 40, they as legit as you could be, because Baylor's got some dudes, including Jeremy Roach from
Leesburg,
Virginia. Yeah,
he's at Baylor now.
Yeah, he transferred to Baylor.
I did not know that.
And
your grad transfer, is that what he is?
I'm not sure, probably. But your boy Norchad Omier,
he's on Baylor too.
Yes, he is.
Oh man, they got beat by 40.
Yeah, they got some dudes.
I mean, I know like college basketball is one of those things where like you just throw that game out, you're fine. Yes. But man, that's shocking that they've got those two guys. Those are experienced, legit players, like guys that have played
in the Final Four,
the postseason, and a lot of basketball for ACC schools. Wow, that's all right. That's interesting.
Yeah, but they I think it's more of a cohesion thing. They lost a huge chunk of their production and replaced it with guys like that. And
they'll get
first game of the year playing against Gonzaga, who I think returned a lot, almost a true road game, essentially a true road game. But still, you wouldn't think you lose by 40 with that talent. That just shows I think Gonzaga's a legit contender again.
Mark Few's got to get himself a national championship.
Yeah. Is he right now the best coach in the country after Tony Bennett leaving?
Now that Tony Bennett's gone, who? No, I mean no, it's Hurley. Hurley's the best coach. I mean, it's almost like you forget it. You don't even think about him because he's that good. But after Hurley, who's the best coach? Mark Few is definitely up there. But yeah, I mean, he's got to get himself over the hump. It's almost like they're the Penn State of college basketball right now. They have not gotten over the hump.
No, they haven't, and they've had some talent, and it's not they've just beaten up on some garbage teams in their conference, and then they get exposed. They're legit because they legit put guys in the league. They legit regularly beat these top tier programs. So it's one of those things now where you just gotta when it all comes down to it at the end of the year, put it all together. That one year they got blown out by Baylor in the championship game was the closest they ever got. So that was one hump they got to.
That team was a freaking buzzsaw.
Yeah, they smoked people and smashed them pretty good.
That was the most that may have been, besides these UConn teams, that Baylor team to me was like no one in the country is coming close to this team.
Yeah.
And they didn't.
Yeah. All right, moving on to NASCAR. We talked about a little NASCAR last weekend. Some interesting.
Left.
Yeah. Oh, go in a circle. But some interesting things happened from the NASCAR race this past weekend. Our championship fours and the final four drivers who are still alive to win the championship is set with a question mark. And I'll get to that question mark here in a second. But you had Joey Logano and Tyler Reddick. They each claimed a win during this stage of the playoffs, so they were automatically there. The only two drivers that had locked their spot up going into this final race of this stage in Martinsville. But the other two drivers who got there were Ryan Blaney, the defending champion, and William Byron. Blaney had to win to get in. He was too far down in the points, and he chased down Chase Elliott for the Martinsville victory to earn himself that playoff spot. And so it was down to the fourth and final spot. Basically, it came down to, as that race is winding down, William Byron and Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell, I believe, has been in the Final Four the last 2 years. William Byron is an excellent driver. Been in this Final Four recently as well. So, both very well. William Byron was up by 2 points over Christopher Bell. Points are essentially each spot on the racetrack. So, every time I pass someone, I've moved up in points by one, if that makes sense. So, basically, if William Byron got passed, he would move down a point. And if Christopher Bell passed one person, he'd move up a point and they'd be tied. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right. So William Byron's car is just collapsing. It's going nowhere. It's about to run out of gas. It's on fumes. It's done. Well, William Byron drives a Chevy, and the Chevy drivers and teams noticed this, and so two Chevy drivers who are completely out of it because neither of these two had a chance to win the race anyway, they start blocking everyone from passing William Byron, because if he gets passed again, he goes down a point, and just would take Christopher Bell to pass one driver for them to be tied. And if they're tied, Christopher Bell owns the tiebreaker to move on to the next round. So they start blocking everyone. Brad Keselowski, who has no dog in this fight, who is like, what the hell's happening, is just doing his best to get around these guys because he doesn't give a shit, right, of what happens. They're blocking them, right? Christopher Bell is closing in on Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace's car also fading. It's winding down. Christopher Bell kind of gets Bubba loose and rides up into the wall, passes Bubba, and at this time, someone else had passed Byron, gotten around him, I think Keselowski did. So at that point, they would wind up tied. Well, they call a penalty on Christopher Bell for using the wall to make a pass. And this rule is new because last year, I believe it was Chase Briscoe, to win a race, or almost win a race, he basically floored his car into the wall and rode the wall around like you would do in a video game, right?
That should be allowed.
I think so too. It was awesome. But I think the reason you disallow it is then you'd be condoning like wrecking your car, doing something dangerous in a sport that's already inherently dangerous, right? I think that's
risk. I mean, sign a waiver, right? You have all these things, right? Sign these legal documents. Say if you intentionally ram yourself into a wall.
I know. I think it's just you don't want to set that precedent, because then you have guys who are doing things even more reckless out there, again, where you can't be reckless intentionally because it's that dangerous already. But I agree, right? If I'm allowed to just ram my car in the wall and I want to do it, right? Well, the controversy is that Christopher Bell didn't appear to do that same move that Chase Briscoe did. He went into the wall because of him trying to get around Bubba Wallace and getting loose himself. And he floored it to try to make the pass, and then he just wound up hitting the wall.
So this is where that rule is a problem, because it's up for interpretation.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, when the race ends, William Byron advances, Christopher Bell doesn't. However, it is against NASCAR rules to knowingly manipulate the result of a race, which by purposefully blocking to not allow people to pass William Byron, you could argue those Chevy drivers knowingly manipulated the result of the race, because they should have just passed him easily. It wasn't like they were running out of gas. They would have passed him like he was standing still, but they purposefully blocked so that no one could pass him because he was still alive. That's where if they can prove that came over the radio, that someone told them you need to block, right, that could open up a can of worms. NASCAR said they are investigating both things. So technically, I don't think the Final Four is set, but I would be shocked if they change or do anything. It's just like those types of things are frowned upon in NASCAR. Whereas in Formula 1, that type of crap happens all the time. It happened this past weekend where Lando Norris's team ordered Oscar Piastri during the time trial to slow down so Lando could win. And Lando was like, I feel no pride in winning this because I didn't win. Just like they did to him a month or so ago when they forced him to slow down so Piastri would get a victory. That's commonplace in Formula 1. It is not allowed in NASCAR. So that's where this kind of gets interesting, is did they fix the result of this race? Who should be that final person? Should it be William Byron or should it be Christopher Bell? And I think that's an interesting storyline heading into the final race in Phoenix. If nothing happens as a result, your final set, Byron, Blaney, Reddick, and Logano, should be a great race either way. But we've got that final coming up in Phoenix over the weekend. But thought that was a little wild, a little interesting. Love a good NASCAR controversy. There's also, I believe, in the Xfinity and the Truck Series race in Martinsville this week, both of them ended in fistfights on pit road.
That's the way a racing should end.
Rubbing is racing. Yep. So if you went to all those races, you got a treat this weekend in Martinsville, which coincidentally, I've been to that track multiple times.
There you go.
Literally a tiny little circle in the middle of nowhere field. You're just roasting in the sun. Any event that allows you to bring in...
Martinsville is in the middle of nowhere.
Yes. Any event that allows you to bring in 24 to 36 cans of whatever you want has sold me. That's going to move us on to our Mimosa Minute this week, which is brought to you as always by Main & Co., the creators of the modern mimosa. Follow them on Instagram at maine.co and visit them at mainsip.com to order yours today. Maine & Co., championing women's athletics since 2020. I'm Mimosa Minute took us halfway around the world to Japan in the Toto Japan Classic for the LPGA. I don't know how many of you were watching. I was watching because it was 1 a.m. and I was feeding a newborn child, but I don't know how many of you guys were up at 1 a.m. doing that, but it was a hell of a final round. Ryo Takeda, she kind of found a little comeback because Marina Alex had looked like she was going to wrap up, but it was very competitive. A lot of players up there at the leaderboard, but Takeda and Alex went to a playoff, and in the second playoff hole, Takeda wound up winning the championship and the $300,000 prize. But that was a fun tournament to watch. But like I said, up at 1:30 in the morning, feeding a tiny child kind of allowed me to watch that because there's not a lot that's on TV at 1:30 in the morning.
That's multitasking, baby. Good
Yep.
work.
Yep. My wife was like, "What the hell are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm doing research. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
It's 1:40 in the morning.
Being a good
Yeah,
dad,
well,
obviously.
What day was that?
it would have been Saturday night.
Saturday night? Oh, there wasn't a
Sunday morning. Let's call it
Sunday morning.
It was
Okay.
yeah.
You should
No.
get some Pac-12 after dark, but there's no Pac-12.
There wasn't
anymore.
this week.
This week. That's right.
There
because
was no
saved-
there was
it
no
saved
10:30
for the
game.
World Series, right?
Yep, there was
It
no.
was saved to have everything meant to be the World Series. That's why there was no late night. I think the latest game started at 8.
Yeah, there was no late game that was televised.
Yeah, wow, that's weird.
Yeah,
Forgot about that.
but that's why I was watching the Toto Japan Classic. Fun, good stuff. So that's going to take us to our final segment this week. If you guys didn't have anything else Mimosa Minute wise to add, nope. Our final segment, as always, is our favorite segment that is brought to you each week by One Legacy Title and Escrow in Jacksonville, Florida. Visit them at onelegacyflorida.com and see how they can help you with your next closing. One Legacy Title and Escrow, because your legacy matters. This week for our favorites, we turned to our favorite running backs of all time. Football, by the way, in case you didn't know. Right, not right backs, but running backs at the different RB. Yeah, you didn't get 3 points. Damn it, Gary.
God, get it and get 3 points.
Who would like to start us off?
I'll go.
Okay, Komlo.
Honorable mention, going with Frank Gore.
Good one.
I like that.
Yeah, I think Frank Gore, in my opinion, deserves a shout out somewhere. So
Number 3 all time leading rusher in NFL history, I believe.
Yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yeah. Just Frank Gore, honorable mention. Number 5, going with Adrian Peterson. Adrian Peterson.
All day.
Yeah, all day. I think most of these names are going to speak for themselves. If you guys actually want to talk about any of them, we can. But number 5, Adrian Peterson. Number 4, I'm going with LaShawn McCoy.
Oh, shady.
Yes.
You know where he's from?
Where's he
Pitt.
from?
Pitt.
Yeah.
He, I believe, wasn't he the one who beat the Pat White team?
Is he on that team, the 13-9?
Wasn't that him? Yeah, that single-handedly beat them, and that crappy Pitt team that took out West Virginia.
Terrible.
That was like Steve Slayton and
that was the year that all West Virginia had to do was beat a crappy Pitt team.
I believe 2-win Pitt team at that time.
At home, by the way, with one of the most electric offenses in football, and they scored 9 points.
Yeah.
And Pat McAfee missed 2 field goals. I believe one of them was like a 36-yard chip shot.
Yeah. I think that was shady.
For $100,000.
That's why he wasn't kicking for money. What are you doing in this club? Shaking them for dollar bills.
These poles are horizontal.
Oh, they're called uprights. All right, so number 4, LaShawn McCoy. Number 3, one of my absolute favorites. I'm going with LeGarrette Blount. Love me some LeGarrette Blount, baby.
A great fantasy team name as well.
Oh yeah.
I can just remember him at Oregon just punching the guy at Boise.
Oh, yes.
That's a good pull. That's a good
I don't know why it's like the guy's a Super Bowl champion. Yeah, he did some pretty good things in the NFL, but
he was like mad tight with Robert Kraft too.
Him just
like Robert Kraft loved LeGarrette Blount.
He performed.
Yeah,
LeGarrette Blount also once he left New England, he was like, "Oh, the grass isn't greener.
Yeah.
I've got to get back."
Yeah, and that dude was just an absolute unit. Number 2, I picked this guy for, obviously we're basing the majority of this off of on-field performance, but this dude is just so funny. His post-football career, I think, is also Hall of Fame worthy. I'm going with Beast Mode Marshawn Lynch.
Yes, that's good.
My gosh, dude. Everything this guy touches is hilarious. He was hilarious in his guest appearance on The League back in the day. The way he narrated the Netflix Cup with Bert Kreischer with the F1 racers and the PGA golfers, hilarious. Oh my gosh, Marshawn Lynch is he belongs I think on everyone's list. I love Marshawn Lynch. Just hand me. I'll run it over real quick. Just hand me the beer. I'll run it over. No, I'll throw it. Number 1 overall. This guy I think was I probably got into football a lot later than you guys did because I didn't play. No one in my family played. So my first exposure to this guy was, I think, probably at a Super Bowl watch party for one of our family friends, and I remember just seeing how awesome this guy was. I'm going with Marshall Faulk.
Masha.
I'm going with Marshall Faulk. Yeah, so that's my list. I'll hang up and listen.
I like it. Boy,
that's pretty good. I have a mix of college, NFL. There's a lot of guys that left off that Marshall Faulk's going. Mm-hmm. A little upset I left it.
My list was very long that I had to whittle down, and I knew I forgot people off of on there.
You whittled it down.
Oh, okay. I will extend it right now. I got a few UVA players that I can put on here.
Making good time.
Anyway,
let's stop and ask for directions. Who gives a shit about time?
I have 2 honorable mentions.
I will turn this car around, young man.
That's it. We're going back to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
I have 2 honorable mentions. The first one is the jersey that Nick is wearing. If you're not watching on YouTube or can't see it on Spotify, Nick is wearing a Peyton Hillis Browns jersey. And I believe Peyton Hillis is from, Arkansas?
Yes.
With Felix Jones and Darren No, not Darren.
Yes.
It was Darren
yes.
McFadden.
All 3 of them were in the backfield at the same time.
He was the fullback and then converted to a running back in the NFL, which is incredible. Next honorable mention was Jamal Lewis from Baltimore.
Nice.
I just feel like that Ravens team, that 2001 Ravens team or 2000 Ravens team that just won with defense.
I think it was 2001 and the Super Bowls in 01.
01, yeah.
I think
where they just played defense and then they ran Jamal Lewis 30 times a game or something.
Yeah,
35 times a game.
Trent Dilfer, the quarterback of that team?
Yes, he was.
Brandon Stokely.
That's why you had to run the ball 35 times.
I think Brandon Stokely caught a touchdown pass in that game. So Michael Jackson ran the kickoff for a touchdown, or Michael Johnson. One of them. They had a kickoff return for a touchdown in that game. That was a good team. Yeah. Because again, we just named the guys who weren't as consequential as that entire defense led by Ray Lewis and company.
Peter Bulwer.
Tony Siragusa. Yeah. Peter Bulwer would have been the Goose.
Number 5 on my list. A lot of Wisconsin running backs on this list.
I assumed as well.
Number 5, Monte Ball. I think he had 77 touchdowns in college, which is an insane number. He had 33 in 1 year.
That's a lot of touchdowns.
And 22 the next year. And his 2011 year, he had 1,900 yards, 33 touchdowns.
Yeah.
God, what a give to have Wisconsin go back to that.
They suck.
Yeah.
I have no qualms saying the word suck on the radio because that's what they are. They suck.
Number 4, a guy that played with Monte Ball, James White.
Yeah.
That also has a Super Bowl championship and scored the overtime winner in the 28-3 comeback for the New England Patriots. James White was a Swiss Army knife of a running back that fit Belichick so perfectly.
Yes.
Number 3, probably the best do-it-all running back, in my opinion, LaDainian Tomlinson.
Good one.
Such a great receiver, such a great runner between the tackles. Also played in that era where you had an I-formation fullback. I believe Lorenzo Neal was his fullback.
Yes. Remember what his face mask? Best face mask. Peyton Hillis
a bar
also
in
had
the
it.
front, right?
No, it was a bull ring.
It was the bull. That's
bull
right.
ring right here with another bar right there and short on the sides. Best face mask.
Yeah. So LaDainian Tomlinson was one of my favorite do-it-all backs. And I remember that like Sports Center commercial with the visor at the mailroom. And he's just
Reading.
like, Chuck, can't read it.
If you ain't cheating, you ain't trying.
Number 2, a guy that should have won the Heisman Trophy, but got denied from Stanford.
Yeah.
Toby Gerhart.
Yep. Knew he was coming up.
Christian McCaffrey there, but no.
Toby Gerhart. I knew where you were going.
Toby Gerhart lost. I believe
that was to Mark Ingram.
He won best running back, and then lost the Heisman to another running back. And that Stanford team was really good too.
Yeah, but they lost a game or two down the stretch, and that's what screwed them. I think they went like 9-3, and they needed to go like 11-1.
Yeah, and then number 1 from Wisconsin, my all-time favorite tune-in back to watch, Melvin Gordon.
Nice.
I believe at one point he had the record, and it lasted like 2 games. The record for most rushing yards in a single game in college football. It was like 420 something, and then I believe Samaje Perine broke it like 2 weeks later.
Might have actually been the next week,
the next week.
Yeah, and that was kind of BS too that he broke it because Melvin Gordon did it, I think, against like a legitimate team, and Perine they were playing like an FCS bullshit.
I believe.
Akron
Nebraska.
Type. They were playing a garbage team.
No, Melvin Gordon.
Melvin's Gordon. Yes,
did it against Nebraska.
Yeah, but Perine's was against some garbage team.
I think too.
Yeah.
But yeah, Perine's was against garbage team. I was upset about that. But Melvin Gordon was my ultimate tune-in factor. And by the way, Melvin Gordon, James White, Monte Ball, we're all on the same team together,
which is amazing.
And I believe their fullback made it to the NFL too. I think it was Brady Ewing.
Good pull.
I don't remember that name.
You don't remember that?
Alec Ingold, Dare Agumbale.
Agumbawale was with Clement. So I think it went like Monte Ball, James White, Melvin Gordon. Then Melvin Gordon overlapped with Corey Clement and Dare Agumbawale. And then it led to Jonathan Taylor, which led to Braylon Allen.
Yeah. Pretty good. My list, shockingly, is almost the exact same as the boys. My honorable mention, first one is Peyton Hillis, which is the aforementioned jersey that I am currently sporting. Only because he wasn't always a running back. He wasn't a running back that long, but you alluded to it. He went from fullback to running back and was productive. Like, that is unheard of. We just referenced the guy, Dare Agumbawale, who did that, but he still wasn't.
He was a scat back. He was like a slot receiver receiving back.
He played some
more, like Derek Watt.
He played some fullback though for Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken. I think
Corey Clement may have. Agumbawale is not big. He's not a big.
He's not, but I think there are times in the NFL where he's been listed as fullback and was listed as that at Wisconsin sometimes. But yeah, Peyton Hillis, he went to Arkansas, was sharing the backfield with Darren McFadden and Felix Jones, 2 first-round picks, and he moved from running back to fullback to help his team win, and it's one of the greatest backfields in the history of college football, what those guys were able to do, and then gets the pros, started out as a fullback in Denver, moves to Cleveland, and they almost were like, we have no one left. Do you want to play running back? Sure, and had a phenomenal year or two there. Definitely the 1 year.
Linsanity run.
Yes, and it was awesome. And
Madden cover.
He's like just one muscle, which is also I love to see from my running backs. But yeah, there may never be another one like Peyton Hillis. So that was my first honorable mention. My second one is the bust, Jerome Bettis.
Nice.
From Notre Dame.
Yes, Jerome Bettis was fantastic. So nimble on his feet for such a big guy who's rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, but had no problem running over people to get to where he needed to go. I think there's a reason that his teams won a lot of games because he was consistent all the time. Give it to him, you know what you're going to get.
And the iconic running over Brian Urlacher.
Oh, yeah, that was him.
Yeah.
The bus is awesome. Also, the bus, did you know he threw out the first pitch at a Richmond Flying Squirrels game?
Yeah, you
Well,
missed it.
when they were playing the Altoona Curve, because Altoona's not that far from Pittsburgh, they brought him out on a bus. They drove a school bus onto the baseball field. He got out of the bus and threw the first pitch, got back on, and drove the bus off.
Didn't you miss that?
I missed it. I saw the bus leaving the field, and people were like, "It's Jerome Bettis!" Like, son of a bitch. Number 5, Fred Jackson from.
Fred Jackson.
You'll never get it. I could give you a few thousand tries. You'll never get it. Coe College, a Division III school, I believe, in Iowa. Fred Jackson. Do you know who else went to Coe College?
No.
Kurt Menefee, who hosts the NFL Fox stuff.
Where's Coe College?
I believe it's in Iowa.
C-O?
C-O-E. Coe.
C-O-E. Coe. Okay.
Yes. But Fred Jackson, loved Fred Jackson, the epitome of doing whatever it took to not only win, but to keep your job and be relevant and productive. Catching balls out of the backfield, third down back, getting the tough yards. He was always just consistent. Buffalo, yes. I love Fred Jackson. Like I said, he's one of my favorite running backs of all time. For me, fantasy darling, because he could do all these different things. Like if you were a fantasy owner, there's no reason not have him on your team. But what I love is that he's the underdog, right? Came from a Division III school. He's not flashy. He's not breaking off a 75-yard touchdown run, jumping over people. But he's always going to give you consistent production. He's not going to fumble the ball. He's not going to drop passes. He's going to pick up blitzes. He's going to do all the things you need for him to do. He's going to do the things that win you games, and that I love. Number 4, you're number 4 as well, James White from Wisconsin. He, in my opinion, is the least appreciated of all of the talented Wisconsin running backs that have come through that university. And I don't know why. I think it's because he didn't have the flash. He wasn't running people over. Yeah, he wasn't running past people, but he was much like Fred Jackson, productive and did everything. He's the best pass catcher of all those Wisconsin running backs, because a lot of those running backs weren't good pass catchers because they never had to, right? To be able to carve out the role he was able to carve out in the NFL is a testament to how complete of a back he is, and he is the typical New England Patriots player. I mean, that is a Bill Belichick player to a T. He scored the winning touchdown in overtime of that 28-3 comeback over Atlanta. James White is my favorite of all those Wisconsin running backs. He's my number 4. My number 3, just like your number 3, was LaDainian Tomlinson from TCU with his awesome kick-ass visor, yes, which I don't think you'll see anyone really do again, because I don't think it gives you any advantage, but it looks freaking sweet.
That era of visors and neck
rolls. Lorenzo Neal, I think, might have had a neck roll with his awesome bull ring of a face mask. But yeah, again, speaking about Fred Jackson, James White, LaDainian Tomlinson was able to do all those things that they did, but at a just incredible level, a next level. Does he still have the NFL record for most rushing touchdowns in a season? I thought he might. I mean, he was just incredible on those Chargers teams, and the most fun running back to watch, I think. And again, because he did so many different things, very much like Marshall Faulk.
He does. Do you want the 1 through 4 of the most touchdowns in a season?
Lay it on me. Rush downs. Give me the rush downs.
LaDainian Tomlinson at 1 with 28. Sean Alexander with 27.
Oh, yeah. That MVP year.
Priest Holmes with 27. Yes. And then Emmitt Smith with 25.
Yes. Yeah. No, love LT, because I think that year he also caught several touchdowns. So he just lit up the scoreboard that year. Number 2 is Adrian Peterson. Arguably the best running back in the history of football. I think he has a legitimate claim to that. It doesn't get there because when you look at the total yards, it's very similar to like the Barry Sanders argument. But those were 2 guys who played on teams that really weren't very good. Didn't have any help around them. Barely had a quarterback. I mean, let's be the quarterbacks that they ran out there for freaking Minnesota. What's his face? Christian Ponder, right?
From Florida State.
Yes. Right? They might as well have had us back there playing quarterback. And he was still against like 9-man fronts able to rush. He has a single game rushing record. I think he beat Jamal Lewis's single game record by a yard. Right? He almost got the single season rushing record, right? He almost broke Eric Dickerson's by like a couple yards. He is the best back of that generation, bar none.
No one ran harder
Yes.
than Adrian Peterson. There's just the iconic, the second you think about Adrian Peterson, is him just like high stepping through people's faces.
Yes.
Like no one ran harder. And
he ran angry.
He ran angry. Yeah, the definition of angry runs.
Yeah.
And he didn't fumble. I mean, I don't know if he had an issue with fumbling because he held the ball out a lot, but he had, everyone kept saying his hands were unbelievably strong.
He had big hands.
Big hands.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, Adrian Peterson is, I think a top 5 back ever, and that may be doing him a disservice. He may be in that top 3 range, to be honest. Yeah, you got to factor in your Jim Browns, your Walter Paytons, and guys from other eras, but man, to do what he did in the era in which he did it on the crappy teams he did it on, very much Barry Sanders-like, in my opinion. My number 1 running back is Emmitt Smith. Emmitt Smith, the all-time leading rusher all-time in the NFL. I believe that was the first jersey I ever owned, was an Emmitt Smith jersey. We talk about consistency. We talk about, work ethic and integrity and a lot of the intangible things, and that's what Emmitt Smith had. He wasn't the biggest guy. He wasn't the fastest guy. He wasn't the strongest guy. But for him to put the production that he did at that level is amazing. He had those things that you can't measure. And my favorite part about Emmitt Smith is, what his touchdown celebration was?
He handed the ball off.
Hand the ball to the ref and jogged off the sidelines every time, because I'm going to do this again to you over and over again. And it's not about me. I hate losing, and I'm doing what I can to win. He, yes, I think sometimes he gets underappreciated by the newest generation because of that, because they may only know him from like a couple, like that commercial, right, with him and Marino and Randy Moss and Jerry Rice, where they're like, oh, we could go back and play this. And they don't show Emmitt Smith highlights all the time because it's not like he has a Saquon Barkley type of thing. Right. But, man, when he did everything, Super Bowls, right, all-time leading rusher, he was so good for so long, and he did it without having the greatest measurables that you could have. And I think that is why he's underappreciated. But he is in that pantheon of greatest running backs of all time. That's my number 1.
Underrated, too. I think Frank Gore is our version, our generation of Emmitt Smith.
Emmitt was better. Emmitt was better than him, though.
God, but Frank Gore, and then you look up the numbers, though. Frank Gore is third? Just consistency, getting 1,000 yards every year.
But he didn't win the Super Bowls
No, he did not. But he was extremely underrated. And
yes,
just was a running back. Just did his job and did it well. There was never any controversy with Frank Gore. There's never anything with Emmitt Smith, right? It was just, here's the hole. I'm going to have vision. I'm going to here. I'm going to break some tackles. I'm going to run hard. And I'm going to hand the ball off to the ref, and we're going to go back to the next play, and I'm going to be a workhorse.
Yeah, there was a generation of running backs that are underappreciated. Curtis Martin, Fred Taylor.
I know. I had all those guys.
Yeah,
I was
me too.
thinking about putting on the list of
Marshall Faulk, right, is on that list as well. All those guys Adrian James. Oh, they're so good. But there wasn't this whole look at me with any of them, right? Maybe Adrian, because Adrian had that holdout that Peyton is still pissed off about that he referenced on Monday Night Football. But the Curtis Martin, Fred Taylor, quiet guys.
I think Belichick said Curtis Martin, I think, is the most underrated running back ever.
Yeah, I buy that. Him and Fred Taylor took forever to make their first Pro Bowls because they never did anything flashy, so they were never voted in. But, man, those guys are fantastic running backs. You don't have that anymore. You don't have the workhorses because I think – it's a culture thing. We talk about culture. It's from the ground up, from when you start playing, you have to build that culture of being a workhorse, and that means not taking things for granted. That means working hard, and we don't do that. We push more for the TikTok clip, right?
I tell you what was the next one. Guy from Boise, Chancey.
Yes, he reminds me of those guys a lot.
He feels like to me is a Ricky Williams type of running back.
Just because the hair.
It's because a little bit
because you can't tackle him.
It's the stature. It's this I don't know. It's just kind of the way he he moves. Feels Ricky Williams ish.
I like that. Ricky won the Heisman. Ricky was awesome. Texas. Horns down. But yeah, Ricky was awesome.
You know who I'm surprised you didn't have on your list? Tiki Barber.
Well, him and Thomas Jones from UVA. Both are great running backs. If I were a Giants fan, Tiki Barber would be on my list. But, I'm a Cowboys fan, so Emmitt goes to the top. But, yes, both of them were very, very close to being on there. There's some names you could go through it. I wanted to put Eric Dickerson, and I wanted to wear my Rec Specs, the goggles, in honor of him. No one besides him and Kareem have done more with Rec Specs than Eric Dickerson.
Yeah, true. But
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar,
St. Louis right now, Robert Avila, basketball player.
Yes, he's on that list. He's getting there. But no, Eric Dickerson. Yeah, there's some great names on there. Just couldn't get to. Only a couple spots. Anything else before we wrap this show up?
Nope.
I love it. So that's going to go ahead and do it for us here at What Caught My Eye. Remember to follow us on our socials on X, on Instagram, and Facebook at WCME_sports. We debut our episodes each week, Wednesday at noon on Spotify and on YouTube. Comment, like, subscribe if you have not done so already. For the boy, Stephen Veschi, and the man, Stephen Komlo, I am the coach, Nick Veschi. Remember, be decent to each other. Have a good one. We'll see you next time. Take care, Guatemala.